I've been able to meet with a fair number of Connecticut citizens. Some of them are, regular service, and obviously we have National Guard. I actually had dinner with about 20 representatives of the 103, which is based in Bradley, and I've met a number of folks from from 103 in a couple of different places in my travels. I've also run into Connecticut citizens who are serving in, regular Army, Navy, or Air Force. Yeah, I met with folks who were on the security detail today, and so met with those folks. During the course of this whole trip, I spent time in Washington with not only with Secretary Panetta, but also with a number of deputy secretaries and General McKinley, who oversees the National Guard. I had some serious discussions with him about the future of our Bradley operation and the National Guard there, and what their mission is and will evolve to be. Obviously, then spent some time over at Walter Reed, got to see what is a magnificent new facility, and to see some wounded warriors who are getting care that is really difficult for anyone to comprehend. The quality of the care that they're receiving there at Walter Reed. Also went over to the new brain trauma rehabilitation unit there, which was also equally impressive. And then from there went to the airport and on to Kuwait. We were in Kuwait, I don't know, about 20 hours or so. I think about 20 hours, 22 hours. I got to Camp Arif and also Ali Al Salim Air Base, which are the two of the larger facilities. Arif is the big one, and got to see that. Got to see a couple of guys, actually a guy who is working down at the ports, so he specifically came back from the port so he could meet with his governor. Also met a regular soldier, graduate of the U.S. Military Academy, who's a Connecticut resident as well. So I've had opportunities both in Kuwait to meet a number of Connecticut citizens, and obviously here in Afghanistan.
Governor, this is Mark in New Haven. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, sure I can, Mark. How are you?
Good. I can't hear the other questioner. Someone was supposed to be in here intervening on this. We wanted to start a television interview here for a moment, if you don't mind. Is that all right? Well,
hey, how are you?
Well,
good to see you. Hear you. I can't see you. Good.
Are you talking to Mark, or who are you talking to, Governor? We're having a little problem here.
So I'll talk to. I mean, I'll do this whatever way you guys want. I talked to Sue. I explained where I have been. I can't actually talk about where I am and where I'm going, but I explained that I've been to Bagram and Kabul area. And I'm in Afghanistan right now.
Tell me, Governor, I'm sure there are people watching this who are thinking, you're the governor of a small state. We don't have any Connecticut Guardsmen in Kuwait, yet you went there. We only have about 100 in Afghanistan. So what really is the purpose of this trip? Not that it isn't nice to see someone from home no matter where you are.
Got it. Hey, Mark?
Yes, sir. Oh, okay. What happened now? Did you not hear that last question?
Are you ready?
Yeah. You can hear me all right?
No, I didn't, but I didn't hear the question, Mark, but if you repeat it, I'll answer it.
Okay. I'm sure there are a lot of people watching this who are thinking to themselves, you're the governor of a small state. We have no troops in Kuwait. We only have 100 in Afghanistan. So why this trip?
Well, obviously, as governor, I have to take charge of the National Guard, and I've worked with them, and there are a number of National Guard troops as well as regular Army Connecticut citizens, regular Army, Navy, and Air Force here, and I have had an opportunity to meet with a number of them at all of our stops. So it's pretty rewarding. You know, one of the tough things of being a governor is to have to do those coming home ceremonies, but that's actually nice. The sending off ceremonies are tough, and of course, in the case of injuries and death in particular, attending those funerals is a tough thing. I certainly wanted to understand what our troops are facing when they're called up and when they're sent to Kuwait or to Afghanistan, and I think it's part of a support for them. It's also a learning process for me. It's an important opportunity, I think, which the DOD is making available to governors. They invited a large number of governors. 2 of us could go on this particular trip, and I have to tell you, I'm proud to be able to make the trip.
I know that you can't tell us where you are, but can you give us an idea of where you have visited, where you have been?
You know, people are amazingly upbeat, I have to tell you. I can't give you the name of the person who was injured, but we had a Connecticut citizen badly injured just the other day, and who's back at Walter Reed now. But I was sitting with his cousin. He's an amazing, the injured fellow's an amazing guy. His cousin is tremendously upbeat because he was brought to Bagram for treatment, which is an unbelievable hospital that I just had the opportunity to see a few hours ago. He got there. If you get to that hospital, in the last 6 months, they've had they've had 100% save rate. He was flown off to Germany and then now to Walter Reed. And yet his cousin was amazingly upbeat, understood what his responsibilities were, was caring for his responsibilities, happened to be a sergeant, and obviously looking out after his men. These are amazing patriots that I have the opportunity to break bread with, or have a conversation with, or tell a joke to.
Governor, this is Mark again. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can, Mark. Go ahead.
Okay. What does this bring to the office of the governor? How does this help make you a better governor? It's kind of hard to get a grip here on why.
Well, Mark, you know,
why the citizens of Connecticut would think this was a good investment sending you there.
Well, Mark, the reality is that Connecticut is a very large supplier with respect to our defense. And that is with respect to goods and services. And obviously we have been called upon since 9/11 to send our best and brightest to sacrifice on behalf of their fellow citizens. For the last 10 months, those people have been working for me as the governor of the state of Connecticut. So I feel in some senses a sense of responsibility to understand what they're doing, how they're doing it, how they're being treated, and what their spirits are. But I think on a broader basis, Mark, I think it's important that American leaders, whether they happen to be in municipalities or state governments or Congress or Senate, have an understanding of the sacrifices we ask people to make on our behalf. You can say you can do it from a distance, but I happen not to be a believer of that.
Do the people that you speak to, the members of the Guard and others, believe that the mission is done there now that we're pulling out?
Well, you know, we're pulling out of Iraq, and my time in Kuwait was actually spent understanding how that operation is going. Obviously, as the Secretary testified, there will continue to be a limited presence in Iraq, but there's a tremendous amount of materiel that has to be removed from Iraq, and I actually saw and had an opportunity on a first-hand basis to observe how that operation is going, and certainly understand. You know, we've all been hearing about these truck convoys in and out of Iraq. Well, I had the opportunity to actually understand how one of those is constructed, what equipment is used in it. I saw a number of Wayland lights. I actually had my picture taken next to a Wayland alarm and light system, products that are made in Connecticut. I had the opportunity also to fly in a Black Hawk that we know was put together at Sikorsky in an engine built in Bridgeport. You know, this drawdown is a big ask of our federal government, of its services. It seems to be going remarkably well. And then, of course, in Afghanistan, they're preparing for changes here as well. Well, John, you know, we actually built into the bipartisan job bill, and I insisted that we will pay $900 a month for a company that hires a recent veteran or someone who's been on long-term unemployment or a person with disability. For others, that credit is only $500. So we've already addressed that issue in a much bigger way than Connecticut has ever undertaken to do that. I've also been working with folks on hiring, making sure that wounded warriors are hired, and specifically working with the folks from Magellan out in Farmington to encourage the insurance industry in particular to step forward. The health insurance industry, but the general property, casualty, and life side of the house, to hire people who have this extraordinary talent set, skill set, and leadership set. And so, you know, I've been committed to that cause from day one. Happy to have seen it addressed in the bipartisan job session, but also I will champion this, I can assure you. You know, the thing about, I think it is, I think what I have learned in state government is if you're not out there actively pitching or explaining what you're offering, then people are not going to be able to take advantage of it. And I saw that because we know that there was a credit. It wasn't a very big credit, only a couple of $100 a month, and I saw to it that it grew much larger. But there was $20 million set aside for that credit. Only $1 million of it was used. And in some senses, one has to wonder whether you don't advertise those things in an effort to make sure that the money can be spent some other way. I don't have any intention of seeing it spent any other way, and so I have to go out there and sell this program.
Governor, this is Mark again. Do you have time for one more question from us?
Well, you know, again, most of the folks who I spoke to have a job that they'll be returning to. Although 3 of the people in the group that I spoke to at Bagram and had dinner with actually were unemployed at the time that they were deployed. So, you know, I think we need to make sure that we are reaching out to these folks. Certainly, the TAG, the general, he's responsible for making sure that that we're reaching out to all of our folks as they come back to Connecticut. We try to hook them up with the appropriate services, and obviously there's some time built in between their getting back and their actual final release for us to address that issue. But you know, so far I think our National Guard folks have done a good job. But obviously I'll be talking about it with General Martin when I get home.
Governor, this is Mark Davis in New Haven again. Can you squeeze in a question again from us? Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
I know.
Yeah, I can hear you. Go
okay.
Ask the question, Mark, and I'll answer it.
I know that you've had some access to Secretary of Defense Panetta during this trip. Did you talk about the prospects for the Joint Strike Fighter and whether or not that might be affected by this deadline that the Congress is facing on the budget?
We talked about a couple of systems. The Joint Fighter was one of them. Obviously, Secretary Panetta is going to be at Electric Boat, and obviously explained to him I wouldn't be there because I was going to be a little busy, but we talked about that, and we also talked about the mission of our Air National Guard if there were some changes to be made. Obviously, I also discussed that with in more detail with General McKinley, and specifically want to make sure that we have an air mission in Connecticut. So we had pretty long conversation with Deputy Stockton as well. So I covered a lot of ground on Monday. And what I do is when I have those kinds of meetings, I'm briefed by my staff as well as General Martin on what the military issues are. Obviously, I'd like to see the two sub program continue. I made that known. I'd like to see the joint fighter go forward. I certainly made that point. That's got a lot of interest for us and Pratt & Whitney engines to power that system. And also with respect to the mission of our Air National Guard, to make sure that they're going to have an ongoing and serious and important mission. So all of those things I specifically did address.
And that's specifically at Bradley, for the base at Bradley.
Yeah. Well, John, if you review the testimony of Secretary Panetta the other day, and I had an opportunity to do that, he indicated that at $1.3 billion, one leg of the nuclear force would take a serious hit. That wasn't submarines. That was land-based. I think the submarine part of that equation remains pretty strong, and I presume, although I don't know, that that's one of the reasons he's going to electric boat in Groton. But the Secretary made it very clear at a $1.3 billion cut to the defense industry, to the DOD, that has serious consequences, and I can assure you at 1.3 it's going to have serious consequences for Connecticut. And that's why I'm invested in arguing our case. And by the way, I mean, this group of 12 has a mission, and they should accomplish that mission. And that mission is to come up with a combination of savings and spending and revenue that will allow us to make reasonable cuts in this budget, but won't devastate the DOD. And so we have this whole issue about what's the savings from the drawdown. How do we bank the savings from the drawdown on the two parts of the theater that are being drawn down? But then how do we go to the next level? But clearly at $1.3 billion, something would give. So one leg of the three-legged stool of nuclear armaments, he's indicated would have to give mightily. He's talked about the smallest service, active service, since 1916, to be exact. So, I'm hopeful that the people in Washington will start to do their job, quite frankly, and I'm hopeful for a lot of reasons: for the future of our country, for the future of our military and the men and women who serve in that and deserve to be treated with honor and have the best armaments as well as the best defense systems. And I also worry about it as a governor of a state that's heavily involved in the in technology, evolving technology, and is employing a lot of people in making some of the best products available in the world for the defense industry. Of course, I'm interested in all of those. But if you get a chance, take a look at Secretary Panetta's statement. Okay. Well, there's a lot of security. When I was in Kabul, there's a lot of security. I was flown in. I actually came in at nighttime to the Kabul area. And flying in it's really quite remarkable. It's a far-reaching, much larger community than I think most people would imagine. And it's also, it's spreading. It is enlarging. There's investment going on. You know, I hope for the Afghan people that they'll be able to beat back the folks that want to dictate everyone's answer. And I hope that they'll somehow find a way to be free, or as free as they can be. I hope that they're clearly people of right intention and good intention, and I happen to be here on a historic day when a jirga is taking place. That went off so far without incident. That's remarkable, because the last number of those have had incident in the past. So, you know, listen, there's reasons to be hopeful. On the other hand, you can't look at the history of the region. You can't examine the religious, the ethnic, the regional, and the tribal differences and say, gee, this is going to fix itself. So you have to be worried, and you have to be hopeful.
Governor, this is Mark again. Can you hear me?
Yep, one last one, Mark. Go ahead.
I know it's a very long trip. When are you coming home, and do you have any jet lag?
I have a lot of jet lag. I think on these kinds of missions, you catch sleep when you can, and so on the flight from Kuwait to Afghanistan, I caught some sleep then. I tried to sleep the night before. It was a little tough. I hadn't adjusted properly. So right now, I feel pretty good. Got to where I am, had the opportunity to take a hot shower, and try to look good for you, Mark. Having said that, I'll be returning relatively quickly, although you know, I've been asked not to talk about the details of our travel and where I'll be over the next couple of days, but you'll see me sometime on Friday.
Thanks very much, Governor.